Okay, what's happening on this Thursday? Welcome in to 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panziga back there making it happen. I'm Buck Rising. I'm with you till 1 o'clock. We got a jam-packed, loaded show, kids. Got a lot of moving parts today. Titans on the practice field. We'll tell you what's significant about that already, having just happened about 15 minutes ago. Josh Pate of CBS Sports, of 24/7 Sports, Late Kick Live. He's going to be in studio because it's week 0. We got college football to talk about this weekend, including one of the local teams. Dianna Russini of ESPN, NFL Insider. 11:20 is when she's going to stop by via Zoom today. We're always excited to learn what kind of information we can around the league and specifically about the Titans from Dianna. Your phone calls, too, 615-737-1045. 615-737-1045 is how you do it. Oh, also, I got Titans tickets to give away, yeah? That's spicy.
It is Titans Ticket Thursday.
Excellent. I'll tell you, so what is that, 12:20? 12:20. I'm giving away Titans tickets. Don't call Lucas now. Don't do it. If you are somebody, how often, it's like the Pavlov's dog thing, where you have the bowl of food and the dog drools. Like, do you think just when I say I have tickets, people stop listening after that and just immediately call the phone number?
Stop listening, start dialing. Yes, that is what happens.
Did you ever call into radio, like, to try and win tickets to something at any point in your life?
Yes.
Have you?
Music, concert tickets.
Right. Because I was trying to, I don't think I've ever done it, but I had to have at, like, some point in like grade school, locally, I think it was like Hot 96 or something like that, right?
I won some Gary Clark Jr. tickets at the Ryman like 3 years ago. It was awesome.
Spicy.
It's a great show.
I think in Evansville it would have been, come see Aerosmith cover band at the Ford Center. Anyway. So, Titans are already in the practice field. You know who's not out there? Treylon Burks. So, because I getting peppered last night on primetime. Absolutely hammered with 70,000 Treylon Burks questions. And I had honestly not noticed how little that he did other than that he didn't participate in team drill. That I knew. Because I asked Lucas, I go, did you see him come back out of the facility at any point? And you said you spotted him while we were out there doing the show. We're obviously in studio today.
Yeah. I saw him in team drills, Titans on Titans, nothing with the Cardinals, none of the joint stuff, but he was just there. He was on the sideline chewing on his mouth guard, and I could see the big number 16, and I just kind of made a mental note, all right, Treylon is here, and then he left before 2 minutes.
So what they're differentiating between there, I don't know, but it's the last day of training camp practice, and he's not practicing, which I think is at least to some degree significant. Now, if not because of conditioning or asthma or all the what do you want to call them, triggers that Titans fans have around this guy right now? If not for that, if just because, okay, is it time to kind of shelf him because the regular season is in 3 weeks and you want to make sure that this guy is as physically ready to go as anything else, and then you'll continue to work the conditioning and the mental reps, the class work that they're going to continue to do with their position group, team meetings, offensive installation, all these different things that go on after the actual practice takes place, because that is, of course, important. But when I saw this today, or when I saw this, I guess, happen at some point last week, were you over there with me when we saw him kind of pull up in the 2-minute drill that they were doing?
With the Bucks?
With the Bucks. Yeah, no, I guess it would have been 2 weeks ago. Because 2 weeks ago, before their joint practices, I saw him kind of come up limping a little bit. It may have been on like a Saturday or a Sunday because it was over on the far field, and I don't remember having to worry about radio, to sprint back during a commercial break or something like that, So I saw him come up kind of limping in 2 minutes, and it was towards the end of the practice, so he didn't go inside. He stayed on the sideline, but he was clearly like laboring on something. And it just, for lack of a better term, because I don't know what it was, let's just call it a lower body injury, and we'll make it a hockey thing, which could be any number of things. But it was enough to kind of make him, all right, slow up, get out of there, and they'll figure it out. They ended up kicking a field goal. No, they ended up throwing a touchdown pass to Des Fitzpatrick and not needing the field goal unit in that 2-minute session. So then he plays in the preseason game, and he's got that wrap on his leg Did you see that? Did you notice that on the broadcast?
Yes.
Because I didn't initially see it in the press box. I wasn't sitting close enough to where I was directly behind him to spot that. But then I saw pictures starting to make the rounds at some point. But he continued to play. Like, he continued to play into the fourth quarter of that game. So much so to where other people are talking about how much is Treylon Burks going to continue to play in the preseason as a first-round pick. And it becomes a discussion point because, for the same reasons that NBC or Roto World or whomever said that he was only running with the 2s and the 3s and made it some kind of unfair storyline for Treylon because he's been working with all 3 offensive units, including the second and the third team. So he came up limping after the deep ball in that game, and that's, I think, when we saw the ice pack, the one that Woodside tried to hit him. He was running wide open down the sideline, and there wasn't enough under it. It ended up being an interception. That's when I saw him kind of start to labor again and go through drills kind of halfway. So there's clearly something going on with him. And, how much further you want to exacerbate that by having him out there at a training camp practice or playing him in a preseason game, it's probably not worth it at this point. But it is of note to kind of keep an eye on now that we're trending towards the regular season, because you're starting to see significant injuries happen around football. Right? You notice the Eagles and the Dolphins canceled their joint training camp practices today. I also saw that's because I think the Eagles have a stomach bug going around, and they're not trying to give everybody digestive issues a couple of weeks before the regular season begins, I guess. You have things like the Cowboys. There is actually Jerry Jones is on First Take right now. Oh my God, they're in front of Jerry World.
Yeah, they got Stephen A in a Cowboys jersey.
Oh my God. With Michael Irvin, they got the whole cast in Cowboys gear. This is outstanding. Is it better than him on the yacht? Were you here with me when it was his first day back and he's doing First Take on a yacht?
I was watching it in the media room at the Titans facility. Yeah, I was watching, and they were moving too. That boat was moving. Their hair was blowing. You could see the buildings in the background just zooming by. I was like, damn, someone's going to get seasick out
Saw
there.
the engine spit out a diaper because it's still the Hudson River and it's disgusting out there.
He was doing it this morning. He did something with Jerry Jones from a helicopter this morning.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they're just pulling out all the stops. Hey, it's time. 2 weeks from today is the start of the NFL season.
Well, are they asking Jerry about his left tackle situation? Because it sounds like Teron. I'm not Teron Armstead. Who's the famous Cowboys left tackle? This is going to Tyron Smith. Is that right? Not helpful.
I love just responding with saying, yeah, Tyron Smith. It's Tyron Smith.
I hate you so much when you do that.
He tore his hamstring, though. A very serious injury.
Okay, so I don't think the Titans have the Cowboys until week 17, but if it's a torn hamstring.
Yeah, it just says he's going to miss multiple months out indefinitely. So
I wonder if they're asking Jerry about his left tackle situation. But case in point, right? A team who I think most people are looking at as playoff caliber at minimum, if not outright contender, and their starting left tackle goes down on an offensive line unit that's gotten progressively shakier since they used to be the best in football. That has very, very quickly devolved for the Dallas Cowboys. So you're starting to see teams have these injuries pile up. And for the Titans, it seems that Mike Vrabel is almost always going to err on the safer side when it comes to, okay, is it worth having you out there in practice if you're clearly dealing with something? No, get off the field.
Especially at this point in camp, like the sense of urgency is a little bit heightened when, like I said, 2 weeks from today, the NFL season begins. 2 days from today, the college football season begins.
Spicy. And Josh Pate is coming in studio to talk about all the excitement of week 0. So we'll do that with our buddy Pate. Certainly with Vandy having a game coming up this weekend as well. And we are a week away from the University of Tennessee taking on Ball State. So Josh Pate in studio. Coming up next, your phone calls are welcome, of course, 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Rising, 1045 The Zone.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
We most certainly are. Welcome back. Welcome in if you're just now joining us on this lovely Thursday. Lovely because it's week 0. College football season upon us to celebrate. Josh Pate, Late Kick Live, 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports HQ. The man is everywhere, perhaps in a cornfield awaiting this coming, Thursday? 2 days from now, Saturday, when college football officially gets underway. Hello, my friend.
Hey, I've got a different picture for you this Saturday. And for the 99% who are driving around have no clue what you're talking about, let's just put it out there. I hop freight trains in my free time. So down in Georgia, there's a very, very small town named Mauk, M-A-U-K. There is a cornfield there. And while we're waiting for a freight, because they run on their own schedule, back in the day, we took all these pictures of ourselves in cornfields. And one of them was just of me with my hands in the air, but the other one was of me looking off into the distance. And
yeah.
That has been dual purpose now for my look ahead to college football. But this Saturday is the one day out of the year I finally get to use the hands in the air, triumphant return. You get the picture.
It's a slow build.
Yeah.
It's a slow build, but it's finally upon us. So what most excites you as we've talked about a lot of different things over the course of the not off season. What do you want to call it? What is the preferred term? Off season?
Just whisper it. It's good with me. Spring also would work. Summer
Spring works.
Yeah.
Okay. Spring or summer. Basically, every week that we have had you in here that there has not been a college football game played, we've talked about different things. But grand view, what are you most excited about this particular college football season of all the different things that we're going to be able to consume, all the different roster turnover, all the different transfer portal players all over the place? What most excites you now that we're finally here?
Well, you've got a different era that's just begun. You can call it the transfer portal era if you want to, but it's begun, and it takes anyone who tries to do predictive modeling, which I dabble in, which just means I get someone to do it for me. It takes that world, and it really throws it on its ear because you got teams like Ole Miss, you got teams like USC who have restructured their entire teams or a huge disproportionate chunk of their teams. So in the past, that would just mean if you've got that many new players, a lot of them are freshmen or sophomores. Well, that's not the case now. Arkansas is kind of like this. That's not the case anymore. So you could have teams that history tells you are not Bama, Ohio State, Clemson level, and they've got to fall back for 2 years minimum to rebuild because they are rebuild programs. They're not reload programs. Well, all of a sudden, you could have Ole Miss right back in double-digit win territory. You could have Arkansas improve on a 9-win year. USC could play for the Pac-12 championship in year 1 under Lincoln Riley. So that's one of them. The other one is when we were sitting here this time last year, you had such preemptive, overwhelming favorites. Bama is a shoo-in. Now, they ended up making it, but Ohio State was such a shoo-in. Didn't play for the Big Ten championship. Clemson didn't play for the ACC championship. OU was the preseason number 1. They didn't play for the Big 12 championship. So we're feeling that again this year, especially in the Big Ten. Ohio State, again, that overwhelming favorite. And then I've got my little computer that spits out Michigan as the number 4 team in the country to me. So I think there may be something to be said in the Big Ten, too. So I can go all over the country.
Well, and that's why stuff like preseason AP top 25 poll, we've talked about the coaches poll and things like that and these various lists and, what poor GA is it just thrust upon to be able to complete for coach X, Y, and Z across the country. But just to see the general conversation points that start there and how many people are still doing the analysis based off last year's results. Like just to run it through an NFL prism, it happens way too often when the NFL makes such a big deal about the schedule release and all these different things, and you got people picking wins and losses across the board, but it's always based on what team X, Y, or Z did last year. And for college football, I understand where the talking points begin, but it seems even more flawed to do it that way in this sport.
There's total amnesia. Every spring and summer, every offseason, total amnesia. And everyone forgets the lesson that history has taught them every year. Every year you learn, and this come December will be no different. Come December, you will have learned again. It would have been totally ignorant and a flawed premise to base this year's expectations on last year's results, et cetera, et cetera. But I really think Preview Magazine is to blame. Preview Magazine culture is to blame. But that's why I haven't really cracked many of them open this past cycle. So I'm just fresh. I'm like a new fawn to the sport every single August. And I just want to, the other overrated question or the other overrated statement is, well, they lost him and they lost this and they lost that. That's cool. But you're not talking about this year's team. What do they have? I want to know what they have. So they replaced coordinators with who? They replaced a wide receiver with who? Your guy, Treylon Burks, right now. Is he practicing today, by the way?
No.
Okay. So be that as it may, he was a big integral part of the Arkansas passing attack last year.
Oh, swell.
Yeah. So he's gone, and that just means there's this crater in Fayetteville, Arkansas that cannot possibly be filled. Well, they went in the portal and got some guys like Hazelwood out of Arkansas, or out of Oklahoma. I think Matt Landers, the transfer from Georgia, very underrated. Warren Thompson's a guy, I think 84 up there. My point is, the perception out there is Arkansas cannot be what they were last year because there's no way you can replace Treylon Burks. If you got your ear to the ground, not only do they think they can replace him, it's been one of the biggest surprise position groups in their fall camp. I talked to Pittman, who's the head coach there. It's a pretty good source. I'll just go on the record with it. A couple of weeks ago, who said, I was worried about them in spring. Like, I didn't think it was a strength for our team. And now I don't even look at it as a wash. I look at it as an actual strength for our team. That's something a preview magazine is not going to tell you. And if you're equipped with just that little morsel of information, that could be the difference in 2 or 3 games for them this fall.
Josh Pate here with us on 104.5 The Zone at Late Kick Josh. Go to YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed to the Late Kick YouTube channel, do it now. Do it right while, unless you're driving. Then, maybe wait till you arrive at your destination.
Yeah, depending on traffic.
Okay. Red light. Be safe. Be smart. Just be smart about it. Make sure you subscribe to the Late Kick channel, and you can get the notification every time he goes live on Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursday nights. And, of course, the podcast available for you as well. I feel like what you've just described is like, I have tried to watch less games while also being on Twitter.
Oh, yes.
Because
that
I feel, especially like I've just kind of tried it during the preseason. Now I'm on Twitter for certain things, but like just to generally ignore the dialogue that is coming from there, because I come out with completely different opinions about the results of what I just watched or a play that I've seen, because I'm not immediately going to my phone or reacting to it and then missing how they're coming out or aligning or certain things, details that I think other people have missed because they're so hooked on stuff like officiating or just the buzzwords that people gravitate towards on social media. I feel like preview magazine culture, which, by the way, this is the primary driver. He seeks these things like an addict during summer and spring. He's hoarding them, I think, under his seat right now. In fact, I think that's what he's sitting on so he can see above all these monitors.
Yeah, it's like a booster. I'm only 5'10".
Hey, that's bigger than the average male. Anyway,
right.
I feel like these are similar things that we're experiencing. It has been so refreshing to me to just kind of get off social media during the game at least, and then see what happens afterwards.
The concept of live tweeting games is just disgusting, and I don't do it.
I do it so much.
Yeah, like you are the guiltiest person of this.
I do it so much.
But I think in a lot of ways, this is not ingrained. It's not in your DNA. You can change. You have it in you to change. I was doing an entire segment the other night. Someone asked me, we did a mailbag segment, and they said, if I'm a casual, how do I stop being one? This is a good thing. The first step is admittance. And someone came to me and said, I'm guilty of so much you talk about. I want to change. This season is the season for me. And I said, well, don't ever call a college football game meaningless just because the playoff spot's not on the line. Don't say stupid things like you are what your record says you are. Don't compare the college game to the pro game. It's like apples to bowling balls. And just do yourself a favor and take your phone and put it in another room from where you are on Saturdays. Now, I only halfway kid about that because for fans, that's fine. That's part of the experience. What I've always wondered is what is the benefit for someone in our line of work sharing all of your thoughts for free during a game on a platform? That is not to be selfish over here and a money grubber. You don't make a dime off Twitter. So I may give you a little something here and there, but that's all meant to ultimately funnel you to that show I'm going to do on Sunday night. That's where you find out what I think. If I'm giving it all to you out there, why would you ever come to the show? Now, you may not come to the show anyway, but you especially wouldn't come if there's a stream of thought every play. 3rd and 10. I think I'd run the option here. They didn't. Fire him. Get rid of him. I can say that tomorrow night. Also, it may be a more well-rounded, well-articulated and thought-out opinion because I'm not changing it every 40 seconds.
As new information becomes available. I think we can have larger societal ills issues with this another day. But it's like seeing 2 Utah games and then being like, I like Utah, like we discussed last time Josh Pate was in here. It's not necessarily the best way to carry out the discussion.
Something a casual does.
Progress. We're making progress. I feel like I've come a long way since we started the show,
You have
frankly.
come a long way, but I have a question for Josh. Where do you stand on tweeting 8-yard run, Derrick Henry brings up 2nd and 2?
Look, I'm telling you, I don't get it. But I know that there may be someone out there who does not have access to watch the game for whatever reason, who is following their local beat writer. And if they're relying on Twitter for play-by-play, so be it. I would use a website if I had to do that, but I get that. It's the concept of the continuous live stream of thought. That's why I put the app down. Luckily, I'm at a game, and I intentionally stay out of the press box when I'm at games. I just stay on the sideline where the cell service sucks anyway. Yeah. So I couldn't look if I wanted to.
You remove the temptation, if any exists. Since we've been talking a little bit about Arkansas, you're going to be in Fayetteville. They've got the Cincinnati Bearcats in Week 1. Saturday, September 3rd is when that game is going to take place. We have talked a great deal about Arkansas because of how promising that program has become under Sam Pittman, how much they kind of recognize the identity of what they're doing. Cincinnati is somebody who also screams that under Luke Fickell and the amount of success that he's been able to build there. But I think for people who are just now starting to get back into the swing of things, or in recent days or weeks are starting to get back into the swing of things, what do they need to know about Cincinnati absent Desmond Ridder and some of the talent that they lost in the draft, since we're kind of talking about those conversations anyway?
Yeah, we had a meeting this morning where I reminded our staff, just because we've said stuff over the past 5 months doesn't mean there is not a huge chunk of people just coming back to the table this week. So you got to repeat yourself a lot. And with Cincinnati, I think the last thing people remember about them is they got handled by Bama, and then they lost a lot of guys to the draft, and then that's it. It's a G5 team, so they're not supposed to be able to compete this year. I've got them playing one of my power-rated top 25 teams the whole season, and it's the first one. It's at Arkansas. So they've got a workable schedule, as they normally would at that level. I have not been up there, but one of our guys has been up there and is very close to the Cincinnati program. So I get a fair amount of intel from him. And he said, look, that staff has zero worries about their overall talent roster. They are supreme recruiters at that level. They are supreme developers at that level. Their roster's better than about the bottom 60% of G5 or Power 5. So they're very, very good. But what they are concerned about, which is obvious, is losing that amount of leadership. The intangibles, even that coaching staff doesn't know what they have right now. Cincinnati will probably be a team where you watch them in Week 1. That line's only 7, and it's at Arkansas. So it's expected to be a very competitive game. You'll probably watch it. If I had to pick the game today, which I don't, I would probably lean Arkansas, but you'll probably watch it and you'll say, man, that Cincinnati team is still really good. Now that's a program. That's not just a team I talk about. That's a program, because they're showing year over year that they can bring it. And keep in mind, Luke Fickell was a guy and is a guy who has had Power 5 opportunities already, and he's turned it down. He'll wait for the right one, but they are, for all intents and purposes, a legitimate Power 5 program, or they've morphed into one. They just happen to reside at the G5 level.
What other games were in contention for Week 1? Because I know you look at the slate and you try to figure out which ones you think the margins are going to be closest in, because that's going to be the talking point. That's going to be the biggest discussion to probably come out of that college football weekend. Which other games were in contention for you?
It was really, really close between this one and Florida versus your Utah Utes.
That's right.
Yeah, that was really, really close.
I'll watch that game.
Of course you will. They're putting it on early enough for
I'll
you.
watch that game.
Live tweet it too.
Hey, listen, you know what? I will stop live tweeting as much at games, but you cannot stop me from bitching every time they run it on 2nd and 10. I'm going to lose my mind. Like, it's the one thing that you can't take away from me. That's a conversation we'll have another day.
Probably fine, though, because that opinion is not going to change after the game anyway. So we got that. We got Utah, Florida. Going to be really good. Utah favored, by the way, slight favorite in the Swamp. You've got Notre Dame, Ohio State, which is the one everyone thought I was going to. And little 10-year-old JP would probably kick modern-day JP for not going to that one just because of the helmets alone. But it's a 17-point spread. I think Ohio State's going to run them pretty thoroughly. If they don't, then we got a different conversation next time I'm in here about what Ohio State is all of a sudden. But I've got several opportunities to see Ohio State and Notre Dame if I want to. Florida's got a schedule that sets up to where if they're successful early on, there are 3 or 4 more opportunities to see them. I probably won't see another G5 team this year. I may not be able to get to Arkansas again. I've never been to Arkansas, and it's going to be an ultra-competitive game. So that's why we chose the one we did.
Florida, the strides that they have made in recruiting, and that being such a staple of what you guys cover at 24/7 Sports and across the network, it's really, really expansive and excellent coverage. The strides that they have made under Billy Napier, I don't know necessarily. Surprising is the wrong word because that would
it's not. It's surprising.
Do you think it's surprising? Yeah. Okay, well then explain that position, because that was my initial reaction, and then I'm like, well, maybe there's something I don't know about this staff. Maybe there's something I'm missing here that I don't have the complete picture.
So when they got there, his staff got there, I always use that metaphor of trying to drink water from a fire hose, and it was never more applicable than Billy Napier's staff at Florida. So they started getting beat for kids. They started finishing 2 and 3 pretty early on in this recruiting cycle. So I had a couple of people from the program I talked to, and they just said, we don't have our act together on the NIL front. We're getting lapped on the NIL front. It's not because we don't have the resources. We have no clue. Like, we're still putting together our operation, which, by the way, is understandable. Think about what all you have to know how to do as a new head coach now. It's your first time in the SEC, first time in the Power 5 level, but all of a sudden you've also now got to know how to, on top of what you used to have to know, mine the transfer portal, re-recruit your own roster, build an NIL infrastructure from scratch, know what you can and can't do. So it took them a little while, as is always going to be the case. And so I did a segment on the show because I bought what I was being sold from down there. And I did a segment on the show, and I just talked about how the expectation level is going to be what it's going to be at Florida. But if that's the case, I'm fine with it as long as you're putting Billy Napier on equal footing as Miami's on. And at the time, I didn't think they were, and I was right. They weren't on equal footing with Georgia. So they were behind the 8 ball as a part of their own doing. They got right in a hurry. And about a month and a half ago, we had a symposium here. It was kind of a closed-door thing, but a lot of the folks from the personnel and the recruiting world came into Nashville, and I got to MC some of it. And I didn't just talk to some folks from Florida. I talked to some folks around the SEC, and that's about the time Florida was kicking it in gear, and they said, hey, heard what you said. I think they did too, because they've really righted the ship down there. And now here's the way you know it's going good for Florida. People are starting to discount what they're doing behind the scenes. I have people reach out to me and say, well, the only reason they're being able to do that is because of, then you can pretty well guess.
I love that as the measuring stick.
Yes. Yes. If they're not saying that about you, that's when you got problems.
They're not scared.
Yes.
That's exceptional. Josh Pate in studio with us. Late Kick Live is the show. Go check out the Late Kick YouTube channel. Subscribe. Make sure that you don't miss this need-to-know college football information. I looked at this game between Northwestern and Nebraska in Dublin, and I was very confused for a variety of different reasons. But then I was listening to one of many, because they love to let you know that they're Northwestern alumni that operate in our space. You know this to be so. I'm sure you probably work with some of them.
I've met a few people who didn't go to Northwestern. That's how I describe our industry. I know a guy who didn't go to Northwestern. I've worked for someone that didn't attend Syracuse. That's how I describe it.
Oh, my God, Syracuse, too. Anyway, Mike Wilbon is in Dublin for the game, and I listen to Tony Kornheiser's podcast every day, probably, that he does one. And Wilbon was talking about the idea that college football internationally is what people are gravitating towards more when it comes to American football, so much more so than the NFL because of the tribalism and how much they can relate it to European soccer. And so when you see a game like this where they're trying it in different locations, obviously it's different than if they were putting Notre Dame in Dublin or something like that, as they have done before. But like the international appeal of college football to you, because you have audience members from all over the place, and I thought you might have a unique perspective on kind of what that projects for the growth of the game in ways that the NFL just hasn't been able to latch on to.
So it's a really particular conversation to have. I'm all for the globalization of college football. That's fine, just as long as you know where the stage is. This is not. College football is not a Broadway play or a musical that you can perform in New York, but then you take it on the road, and the cast and the crew and everything is set up at the River Center in Columbus, Georgia, the same way it would be on Broadway, so you still get the same experience. That is not what you're allowed to do with college football, because so much of college football is the stage. And the stage doesn't move. It's fixed. It's fixed in Baton Rouge. It's fixed in Austin or Knoxville, etc. And so much of what people have seen, whether you be in Dublin, Ireland, or wherever you are, you've seen it being broadcast to you from 5,000 or 6,000 miles away. But if you've fallen in love with it, you've fallen in love with it for the same reason we do. And that is the pageantry and the tradition and the spectacle of college football. It's all well and good if you want to spread that beyond the borders of our country. But I think what you're going to find out very quickly is unless you can uproot Lincoln, Nebraska and Memorial Stadium and take it to Dublin, Ireland, you're going to have a lot of folks who, if they haven't been exposed to the sport already, get exposed to it this week, and they'll watch it and they'll say, okay, that was all right. I don't really get what the fuss is, but that was all right. Now you take those same folks and you let them watch a game played between these two or between Oklahoma and Nebraska a few weeks later and show it to them on the tele and show it to them in Lincoln, and they'll say, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Same thing,
Right.
but it's not the same thing at all. So I think sometimes you overlook the fortification and the improvements that need to be made here at home, and you want to be mile wide, inch deep in your coverage of the sport, and you probably have people in the room making that suggestion that could not for the life of themselves articulate what makes the sport great to begin with. They'll church it up to you in ways that is meant to sell you on it, when really the bottom line is all they're focused on. It happens with playoff expansion all the time. It happens with college realignment all the time. And this is probably another one of those. I'd rather you just tell me, we're doing this game over here because it's already bought. We're doing this game over here because we can make a lot of money doing it. That's fine. I mean, if that's your lane, that's fine. But don't tell me you're growing the game. That's not growing college football. Growing college football is making sure the product stateside gets to more people internationally.
That is the kind of perspective that it's a very diplomatic way to say, know your role, basically, from the boardroom to these actual institutions. You got time to talk about Tennessee?
I got time.
All right, let's talk about Tennessee with Josh Pate. Late Kick Live in studio. I'm Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone. So you had a bit on the show a couple of weeks ago about Hendon Hooker and his importance in the landscape of college football.
Mhm.
Not for a pure regurgitation, but that's something that we've been kind of debating, I think, at great length here. The difference between what people talk about when they talk about quarterbacks, large scale, how, this guy's going to be the future number one pick in the draft, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the best college football player or best college football quarterback, where the disconnects kind of lie. But for the purposes of this game and this sport, why does Hendon Hooker hold this place for you, or the place that he does in the landscape?
Well, the way I tried to phrase it was he's got probably the most leverage placed on him of any quarterback. He's the most disproportionately important, even at the most important position, because he's going to be asked to do more. I still think that they're, by SEC standards, pretty thin and pretty average at best at corner and in the secondary. And so they're going to give up points again. This is not something that Josh Heupel was just able to overhaul in the span of 12 months. And so you saw what he did last year. So he's a proven commodity. The whole 34-3 touchdown interception ratio, that's really, really good. He'll probably have to do even more this year if they want to get to that 9-win threshold, if they really want to make some noise in the SEC East, if they want to make it uncomfortable for Bama when they come in there, when they go to Georgia, he's just going to have to be able to do more. And the other thing to remember is, I had our stats and info department, which we actually have now, by the way. I had them give me a stat the other day when we were getting ready to do Tennessee, and we were going to talk about Hooker, and they said, hey, did you know that Heupel's offense runs more plays per minute than any in the Power 5 level? And I said, well, I knew he was fast. I didn't know it was number one. So you think about how many times they throw it and how many times he's going to have his hands on the ball and how many times also they're going to have to be in point trading situations because they're giving some up. So you've got some places where Devin Leary at NC State, you would never talk about him like this. I would never talk about Stetson Bennett like this at Georgia. Hendon Hooker's that guy. He's got to be that guy. He's got to win games probably multiple times this season for them. That's moving. I barely breathe that many times per minute.
I saw that because, again, you have the recognition in real time, and until you see the advanced metrics, maybe after the season, and you kind of get a larger picture of what you've just spent so much time watching, like you understand that they move, but damn,
yeah,
every place a minute is wild in that sport, and the efficiency that they are trying to maintain and potentially improve upon. It's going to be interesting to see how he responds to that. Now, you brought up there, we'll call them deficiencies. Every team has deficiencies on defense, and certainly the secondary has been a concern. I think, though, that the way that Tennessee fans view Josh Heupel right now is that the roster is deeper. I don't necessarily know that means that the defense is going to be substantially improved, and I think that may be counterintuitive to a lot of people.
He started saying this when we were at media days. So we had our own room, and we get the coaches to come through, not the big room, but we got our own CBS room. So they got delayed because of weather. So they get in probably 15 or 20 minutes late, and I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, and you hear the police sirens get louder, and here comes Tennessee's motorcade down the street, and Heupel comes in, and they're out of breath. They got out of the car from the airport and get right in the room. So I said, look, we can turn this 10-minute into an 8-minute. Take 2 minutes to breathe. He just, through the mouth. He didn't even bother with the nose that morning. But when he finally started to talk, he talked about depth. And depth normally to people is just, okay, do you have more than one 4 or 5-star player at this position? That's not always the true definition of depth. What depth sometimes is related to how many guys you can now trust to play winning football for you. They didn't trust a lot of guys to be on the field last year. And so it may not be that you watch Tennessee this year and just say, wow, that talent level is night and day different. But what you may see is, I saw like 19 different defensive players in this game, whereas last year I would have seen maybe 12 or 13 or 14. Those aren't exact numbers, but you'll be able to rotate more bodies. Hopefully you stay fresher. It gives you a little wiggle room when you're injured, to the point where there's not just this glaring mismatch that everyone knows is a formality going into Saturday. That's not fun, especially in this conference. So when he talks about depth, I don't think he's talking about just overhauling things and portaling a bunch of 4 and 5-star guys in. Maybe that comes in the future. I just think they got more of their roster they can use this year.
Josh Pate in studio with us on 104.5 The Zone. When I ask you coaches or programs who you are starting to hear more about traction, momentum, about the work that they're doing, maybe potential innovations, whether it's on the field or how they're approaching this new landscape or newer landscape of college football? Who are some of the names or programs that come to mind?
Well, you know I'm a Baylor guy. Love Baylor. I've told you the story actually before of being out there last year and admittedly not knowing a lot about Dave Aranda other than what most people knew, and not knowing a lot about the program out there.
It's not like he's giving a lot away, by the way.
That's
the guy's
true.
got a hell of a poker face.
That's true. You ask his wife about him, she says, "I don't really know much about him. I don't. Let me know what he tells you, please." So I saw him at LSU, saw him at Wisconsin, knew he was a really good defensive mind. Everyone will tell you that. But he goes to Baylor in year one, and they're doing some really weird, dumb stuff. I mean, I can't tell you how many times they punted in opponent territory and punted on 4th and 1, and it's just not what the book tells you to do. Well, anyway, he made a move after year one, and he really let go a lot of staffers that he's talked about since then. He said, it put me in anguish because I convinced a lot of guys to uproot their families and move here. And then I told them 1 year later, you're not good enough. And it's on me. It's not on you. I made the mistake in hiring you. And then he overtooled his staff and he changed a lot of things philosophically. And they did what they did last year. They ended up winning the Big 12. But when I got to go out there at that Oklahoma game where they stormed the field, they beat Oklahoma like 27-14 and really dominated them even more thoroughly than the scoreboard would indicate. And I sat down with him after the game before he did his press conference. And we just came off a field storming. Like everyone's exuberant. You can hear their locker room. We're in the next room over. And he's saying, that sounds good, doesn't it? I said, yeah, it sounds good. How do you feel? So I'm kind of disappointed because we lost a game last week. And I fully believe the reason we played like we did today is because we lost last week. And we will not have arrived as a program until I can get our folks to play at the same level and think at the same level every week and block out that external stuff. Because if you need to fail before you succeed, that means you've got to be a loser. Being a loser has got to be baked into our DNA, and that's not how Alabama does it. That's not how the best ones do it. They maintain the same level of consistency every year, just like the same high-level executives are in a position they are because they maintain that mindset per year because they don't think the way average people do. They think differently. So I'm sitting there just the whole time saucer-eyed.
Right. Like I was just looking at you the same way. I'm like, it seems the most obvious thing, but it is such a removed from the immediate train of thought that allows these guys to operate on a different plane. I love that.
And he was so cerebral. He wasn't putting on a show at all. He was just matter-of-factly stating that. So, then they go on to win the Big 12. Well, then I never forgot that, obviously. And we're coming into this year, and they've got some horrific number, like the 126th ranked returning production rate.
Yeah.
But a part of it is because of things like they did at quarterback. They won the Big 12 last year with a guy named Jerry Bohannon, for those unfamiliar. And they go in spring, and Blake Chapin, by the end of spring, is their better quarterback. He's the one who played in the Big 12 title game for him, so he's not a stranger. And Aranda did not do what every other coach does, which is create the illusion of a quarterback battle as long as he can to make sure they both stay on campus. He told Bohannon in spring, you're second best right now. And so you do what you need to do. He gave him an opportunity to transfer. Bohannon transferred out. He just won the job at USF, by the way. So that's technically not a returning starter, Blake Chapin. He's a better quarterback than what they had. And they've also got their entire lines of scrimmage returning. So I look forward to watching them play again this year. And I've heard a lot of folks, to go back to your question, in the coaching and especially in the personnel world, who are starting to take more of a look at not just Dave Aranda, but what they're starting to call the Baylor model. And I think Baylor model, that phrasing is, especially for the non-tier 1 teams, something you'll hear a lot more in years to come.
It's coming up on Late Kick tonight.
Well, we're going to do probably an update comprehensively on the mood tracker. The mood tracker is my favorite segment. Fan bases. I just like to take the thermometer and boop, I stick it in the fan base. Which orifice is not important. We just figuratively insert that thermometer. We pull it out. What do they feel? Because you'll find the reason we need to update it, even though no football games have been played, is because of what Lucas's preview magazines do to people.
My God.
And they're jacked right now. LSU's over-under in Vegas is 7 wins. I dared to predict them going 7-5 the other day, and they torch and pitchforked me. They came after me. I mean, we had to beat away with sticks. It's like, how dare you only think that we're going to go, checks notes, exactly what odds makers think we're going to go.
And Vegas, they know something. They are way too accurate with this stuff for that to be. I don't know why people get themselves so twisted in knots when all of the most relevant information is trending towards the direction that makes the most sense at any given point.
Well, are you blaming Preview Mags for that?
Well, I'm not blaming them for it.
Blame how people consume Preview Mags for that, because I read every Preview Mag there is. I don't think there's any way in hell LSU wins 9 to 10 games this year.
So it's not the substance. It is the ingester. That's what you're telling me.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, I think in many, many different, again, societal issues that we run through the prism of college football.
Do you notice how many times in our conversations about this little sport called college football, we kind of nudge up against these overarching societal conversations, and then we wink at each other and say, "Nope, not today, not today."
I've been trying to keep that bit going as long as humanly possible to allow us to continue to kind of dip a toe in the meta conversation, and but we'll get to that later on. Thanks for hanging out. Josh Pate, Late Kick Josh is where you follow him on Twitter and on Instagram. The YouTube channel, Late Kick Live with Josh Pate, Sunday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then wherever you get your podcast. My friend, always a pleasure. Have so much fun this week and another college football season upon us.
I'll see you soon.
All right. What are we doing coming up next, Lucas? Titans on the practice field. There's a lot of different things going on. Dianna Russini is going to be here from ESPN in just about 20. Stick around. We're going to talk a lot of Titans next.
It is 11:03. Good morning from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Tennessee Titans are on the practice field for the final time in training camp ahead of Thursday's preseason finale against the Arizona Cardinals at Nissan Stadium. The team made a move yesterday, trading for Eagles defensive back Uga Amadi, a Nashville native, in exchange for a 2024 sixth-round pick. The Titans put linebacker Monty Rice on the reserve PUP list, making room on the roster for Amadi. That means Rice will miss at least the first 4 games of the 2022 season. No Treylon Burks out at practice today at St. Thomas Sports Park. Mike Vrabel will meet with the media after practice. You can hear it right here on the Buck Rising Show. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second down on a Thursday. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hour number 2 for us. Us being Lucas Panzica, Buck Rising here with you. We're with you till 1 o'clock. Titans are on the practice field. You're going to hear from Mike Vrabel, perhaps a player or two. We'll see who's on the podium. We are obviously not at practice today. Today being the last day of training camp for Tennessee. And a couple of different things to talk about. Transactions made yesterday. A trade. We haven't talked about it yet. We're going to do a lot of Titans talk and take a wider view of the NFL. Dianna Russini going to be here in 15 minutes. Always a great pleasure for us to get some good intel and information from ESPN's NFL Insider. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in if you'd like to. 615-737-1045. Should we look at some of these transactions that the Titans had yesterday? Because there's a couple that have pretty important implications. So there was a trade made with the Philadelphia Eagles. By the way, John clearly likes to trade with Howie Roseman. The amount of deals that the Eagles and Titans have done since the Eagles and Ravens, they seem to have good relationships with. It's always curious to me to see who's dealing with who and how often those transactions occur or recur. So the Titans have traded for, and he's out there on the practice field today, for defensive back Ugo Amadi, who played at Overton. Yes, Lucas?
That's correct.
How many different Overton players have been on this roster here in the last 6 months?
Just the two, with Amadi and Theo Jackson.
Just the two? Where did Josh Malone play?
Malone was a station camp player.
Okay.
Javante Payton in town yesterday with the Cardinals. He was a Hillsborough player.
That's correct. So a defensive back, Ugo Amadi, coming over from Philadelphia, which, by the way, he just got traded to Philly. He's been a Seahawks starting slot corner for the last couple of years. And he was in – I talked to Greg Cosell yesterday as the trade was being made official. And Greg was confused because I think Greg is based out of Philadelphia. At least they live very, very close. And he's always been around the Eagles in his life. By the way, new episode of The Install out. We did a lot of good work on Malik Willis, Dylan Radins, Nick Petit-Frere, Roger McCreary, so on and so forth, and a couple of different quarterbacks. But Greg was confused by the idea that he was a Titan because he had just gotten to the Philadelphia Eagles less than 10 days ago, as of yesterday.
August 15th, he was traded to Philly.
So today, 9 days total on the Philly roster, technically by transaction. So the Titans gave up a 2024 sixth-round pick. They got back Ugo and a seventh-round pick in 2024. So he's played in the NFL for 3 years with Seattle. He's a fourth-round draft pick in 2019. He has 12 total starts, having played in 47 career games for Seattle, and has played primarily, according to Cosell. I haven't had a chance to watch him in the Seattle defense. I knew that he was there, and I knew because he went to Oregon, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was familiar with the story and the name of the player, but not his body of work, his resume at the pro level. What does this say about the continued churn in the secondary for the Titans? Because he's listed as a defensive back. He's not necessarily a corner. He's not necessarily a safety. They've played him in a variety of different spots. But where he has started a lot of games, a lot of these games that he's played for Seattle, and where he's played a lot of these games for Seattle, has been in the slot. So that kind of puts up a different kind of alert for me beyond what they're churning and their safety depth and the fact that they're clearly not happy with what they're seeing or what they're getting or continuing to try and find different solutions and guys to fit roles that they need them to play on top of needing special teams value. What does that mean for Elijah Molden, who again did not practice yesterday? I have not seen an update. Lucas, you may have. I have not seen an update from anybody at training camp about Elijah Molden today. And I've scrolled both Jimmy Wyatt's
Not at practice.
timeline. He's not practicing again?
Treylon Burks, Elijah Molden, Treylon Burks, like I said, Jamarco Jones, Danico Autry, Naquan Jones. Not practicing.
Danico, that's 25. That's 24 days without Danico Autry.
Yeah, I mean, what made us think that he was going to be back for the last on-field practice of training camp after missing 23 days?
No, I know. It's just, it's almost nearly a month. Because I heard Ramon talking this morning about, like, Harold Landry missing practice. Harold been out there. Harold been doing, like, sandpit work and all kinds of stuff.
He's been kind of getting the defensive version of the Derrick Henry treatment.
Right, where, like, we were stunned yesterday that Derrick did team drills. Derrick was out there doing team drills. I haven't seen that probably maybe once in August, maybe twice in August. But like Danico Autry, it's not participation. And when you think about 2 weeks for Molden early on in camp, now kind of in and out of the lineup, and he did not play in the preseason game, what does this mean for what they're kind of looking at the slot? And would this keep Roger McCreary on the outside if they feel that Ugo Amadi is somebody who can play for them immediately in the slot while they kind of get Caleb Farley more up to speed and they figure out their outside corner situation? These are all different kinds of versions of what the Titans coaching staff is going to be working through as they try to figure out what their best looks are as they now need to get into legitimate game planning mode for New York in week one. Now, again, I think that there are some distinct advantages to playing a team like the Giants in week one that clearly has an embattled quarterback situation that honestly, and the more I got into my Football Outsiders preview magazine a little more yesterday, I was surprised to learn how low they were on the Giants defense, and then I understood a little more why when I saw some of the moves that had been made in their secondary. Kind of like Pate earlier talking about college football teams and how a lot of people talk about football teams in general, sports teams in general, based off last year's results, when there's obviously been a lot of transactions that you may have missed because that's not your team that you cover every day or that you pay attention to every day, unless you've been doing diligent work on fantasy football studies leading up to the last month, basically, of every team's training camp. And then there's Monty Rice, who, as another part of a Titans transaction today, and I guess I was confused, Lucas, because I must have misunderstood the rules on Tuesday when that was I thought it was a deadline for them to move players from active roster, physically unable to perform list, to reserve PUP. I thought that was on Tuesday. So when they moved Monty Rice over from active roster PUP list to reserve PUP list, which would knock him out for the first 4 games of the season, while allowing the team to use his roster spot for somebody else as they figure out cuts in Final 53. I must have misunderstood the deadline situation on that particular transaction because I thought that was Shudak was the only move that they were making that way.
Yeah, really botched that one.
Who? Me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for all your support. I appreciate you being there for me. You know, honestly, I would rather you publicly undermine me that way than leaving me out to drown with silence and dead air on radio. That's always productive.
A lot of lists and deadlines.
You're having a lot of fun back there today, by the way. You've done that a lot more lately. I've noticed that occurring more frequently.
It's all part of the plan.
Okay. Well, we'll see what Dianna Russini of ESPN thinks of the Titans' plan. We'll talk to her about Treylon Burks, who did not practice again today, and what she witnessed while she was here in Nashville last week. I'm Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Welcome back. Dianna Russini is going to jump on with us here in just a second, working through some audio situation on our end, not hers, of course. Faultless there. We'll get some good Titans information here in just a second. Lucas, do you think it'd be better to just call her if we're going to have these problems today? I appreciate her being willing to do Zoom, but we'll see if there's not a solution here in the next couple of seconds. All right, Dianna, we're going to give you a call. But sorry for. All right. So, well, actually, can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear her. Okay, we'll call Dianna. All right. Well, no, I'm not giving out the number. We're going to call Dianna Russini. We're going to talk some Titans with her then. But in the meantime, just kind of keeping you updated with the practice situation, with what's going on. Sounds like the Titans, by the way, reminder that they are not working against the Arizona Cardinals today. Arizona is practicing, but they are practicing over at Vanderbilt with those facilities available for them to work at. In the interest of keeping guys healthy, it doesn't look like they're doing a lot in pads today based on some of the practice field footage that I've seen. We're not doing the show out at training camp, but I'd be curious to know if Dianna, when we get her on the line, is hearing anything about a situation for Treylon Burks, because I know a lot of you have questions on his absence today and his absence earlier. Okay, Lucas, hang on. How do you want me to do this? Because I can't necessarily multitask.
Oh, you can?
Well, not well. So I am going to. I can't talk myself. I can't do the thing that I'm trying to do and talk myself through it.
Definitely don't read the thing you're trying to do.
I almost did. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to send Lucas Diana's number without reading it on the air. Okay, I've gotten the text off. There. I'm sorry. I can't do these things independent of one another. I don't know if people have that same problem, left brain, right brain stuff, or maybe that's not even the right thing. Anyway, so for the Titans, the work that they're getting, it's just against themselves today. And basically the question that I have been having is, all right, are they going to keep up the intensity? How much more work is Logan Woodside or Nick Petit-Frere going to get versus somebody like Dylan Radins? And is Dylan Radins going to continue this situation at guard where he's been working? And basically what I walked in here this morning to talk to Ramon Foster and Will Bowling about, the idea that Dylan Radins was going to be a starting guard by the time that this season rolled around and got more underway. For Lucas, I sent you a different number because I think she's missing a number. The number that I sent you. I'm just trying to multitask here. But with Dylan Radins working more inside, does that push Aaron Brewer? Because there have been moments when I have seen him be beat or get beat in practice, and it's got nothing to do with his technique. It's got nothing to do with his understanding of where he's supposed to be on the field or the block that he's supposed to be executing or the play calls or the protection. It's just that he's physically too small for what he may face against stiffer NFL competition. We've been working it through adversity on the radio show this morning, so hopefully Dianna Russini can bail us out. Hello?
Hello. Please stop acting like this is my bad connection. I'm all hooked up. I got great technology, great Wi-Fi, great phone. This is you guys.
No, I know. Listen, because I heard you had complimented Lucas on that you like his voice better than you like mine, which, by the way, we're going to have issues over this at some point when you were at training camp the other day. So now you can blame. So for all of the voice proficiency that Lucas may have, the complete failure on there, I'm pinning it on him. I have no responsibility in all of this.
He said hello to introduce himself, and I just was thrown off because I didn't expect him to have such a great on-air voice like that. And it's hard for me to compliment you, but if I have to, the day I met you, I think you have an incredible voice. I don't always agree or love the things you say, but I think your voice resonates, and it's honestly a gift. And I'm glad that you're using it in a good way by being a broadcaster. That said, Lucas, where did this come from? And I think he just needs a bigger role in the show. That was my takeaway. Because you imagine what people look like, what they sound like when you don't really get to be around them, and I was very thrown off. So I'm excited to know that if you die, you step right in.
Oh, this is fantastic.
How vindicated do you feel? But just because people have been telling you this for the entire year and a half that we've been on the air, but now you have people with actual credibility gassing you up in ways that bother me.
There is like a purpose to the technological failings when I'm behind the wheel back here. I want to decrease the value in this room so they say, okay, he can't do anything else. Just
He's
throw him in the
useless back
studio.
there.
Yeah,
Put him in the studio. He'll be better than me.
Put a pretty voice on the mic.
Oh, this is trash. Dianna Russini is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Did you have fun at Titans practice while you were here?
I did. I did and I didn't. Couple things I'd like to get into, if you don't mind. Just to paint a picture for the listeners here, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to stand on a football field this year during training camp and just take in practice, because when you're part of a television team, so to speak, at ESPN, you're constantly running in front of the camera to do reports. So you don't get a lot of time to really soak it in. So my schedule for the day was set up beautifully, where I had a whole window of almost like, I think about 45 minutes where I could watch the Bucs and the Titans together and really see some of the things I've been hearing about and watch a lot of the Bucs, because I'm obviously very interested in how they're going to look this year as well. And so I'm standing there, I'm in my glory, I'm in Nashville, I'm around all the people I love. The national media is one of my favorite. And you come strutting down the sideline going, Russini, you're here, Watson got 11 games. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, Deshaun Watson got 11 games. And you walk away, which immediately means to me I need to go sprint to the camera and get in front of it and start talking about it on television as an NFL reporter. I know work is going to need me. So I run over, get set up in front of the camera, and I'm just like, this. First of all, they get in my ear and they say, all right, we just want your reaction. I'm like, I know nothing. This guy Buck, who you guys don't even know, is the one who told me what happened here. Just give me the details and I'll react. So it went from what I thought was going to be a really fun day of just football and seeing what this offense in Tennessee looked like against a Bucs defense, to unfortunately having to really dive into the Deshaun Watson suspension and making phone calls and getting reaction around the league. So, but at the end of the day, they say don't shoot the messenger. I would love to knife you up because you ruined my day.
I'm so sorry. Well, listen, it speaks to what, since we're giving begrudging compliments, I guess, it speaks to what a pro that you are, because you did some exceptional reporting on that Watson stuff in real time, because I went back and watched some of your television hit from that day, other than the ones that people were sending me of me crashing your shot with my shorts that are apparently too short for national TV. But the quotes that you got on the Deshaun Watson situation from people close to his camp were pretty revelatory in how he viewed this thing. And that has had a ripple effect, I think, across the entire Watson-Browns conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, thank you for saying that. It's funny, not funny, but I'm on a live shot with Hannah Storm, and it's just different when you're doing these type of interviews with legends. You feel the I don't care about the viewer or the audience as much in that moment. I care about Hannah, because she's the best at what she does, and she's covered everything. And you don't have a conversation with Hannah Storm on Sports Center, nothing. You can't. I'd rather just out and act like I can't work than bring nothing. And so I, fortunately, as they were talking to me, the details, I was reaching out to my sources with Watson's camp, and it just goes to show you it's such a good life lesson in general. You never know. Take a swing. Like, my thought was, they're not going to answer my call. They're not going to answer. They got right back to me in that moment, and so did sources in the league. So sometimes it is a little bit of luck, and some of it's just trying. And so by the time the camera came to me and Hannah teed me up to ask me what I was hearing about it, I was able to provide what Deshaun Watson's camp felt about the suspension, which is they weren't happy about it. He never apologized to the women after that interview he had done with the Browns broadcast team with Aditi, that he was remorseful for his decision making. And, Buck, this is another thing where when you're in the moment and your job is to report the facts and the news, and this is the on-the-record quote you're getting, but it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
You're thinking, like, you've watched me on television enough. I don't rarely get nervous. And I wasn't nervous. I just knew what I was about to say on television was really strong and hurtful to the women involved in this. And perhaps hurtful to those that are fans of Deshaun or those that are just watching. So, yeah, that turned into a very, very serious day. And my favorite part of that interview, well, I had two. One was your appearance, which we're going to circle back to. But two, at that point during the interview, I had not heard back from my league sources from the NFL, from the NFL front office, to try to get their take on, did they agree with this? They agreed to it, but were they disappointed it wasn't a full year, of suspension? And so Hannah plainly asked me, what's the front office telling you? What are your sources saying? And I was, it's a serious story, so you don't want to be funny or kid around, but I was like, Hannah, I was 50 yards away, trying to, watching Ryan Tannehill throw, which I think at the time was a pretty good pass, and I sprinted across the field, and I'm sorry, I just didn't have time to reach out to the league at this point, and in that moment, I remember thinking either the audience is going to think I'm not a good reporter or they're going to respect that I'm just being honest. And by the time they came back to me, I was able to get some information. While all of this is happening, though, I can't see behind me, right? So we have the cameras, the lights, they have a tent. It's like a whole big production. And I'm talking about serious situations, legal terminology, all this complicated stuff. And then my phone starts blowing up, and I'm thinking, what did I say wrong? What did I do? And it's pictures of your thighs. It's just these, just heavy meat pictures of, you're just – first of all, I never knew you big thighs, but I also never noticed that your thighs pretty much look like the underwear I wear. Or the shorts. I'm sorry, the shorts you wear are like the underwear I wear. Like, you wear those out.
Wait. We need to clarify that I'm not the one sending Dianna a picture of my thighs. People are taking pictures of screen. For the purposes of HR, Dianna, I feel I had to clarify because that became a very different kind of a visual, one that I'm sure is already populating your mentions for different reasons, but not specifically between our texts.
My life is over. No. Buck is behind me in the shot as I'm reporting, and people are screen grabbing his booty shorts and sending it in. And it's clouding not only my Twitter feed, but it's just clouding my form of communication in the moment on a very big story. So it's like, hey, we're not apologizing to the women. Picture of Buck, thigh, meat, thigh, booty short. It's just, wear longer pants, please.
Listen, people. I think that your criticism has been noted. I will take it into account, but I'm also wearing they are the same kind of shorts. They're just in a different color today. So you're not going to stop me. It's too much to deal with in this August humidity in Middle Tennessee, Dianna. It's for my own purposes. If everybody else has to deal with the consequences of that, I'm kind of willing to live with it. Although to have your phone being just berated, because I did see a fair amount of people sending that same screenshot to you while you're trying to do this very, very serious investigative journalism. I do apologize for that, but I will not apologize for the shorts. The shorts live on.
Yeah, well, this is why I'm not coming to Nashville for a minute. I need a break. I just need a nice little break from you guys.
So your observations in the time that you did get from Titans practice, I saw your hit on NFL Live the other day. By the way, Dianna Russini here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At Dianna ESPN is where you can follow her and send her screenshots of me apparently crash bombing her television live hits. What were your observations of the Titans and specifically Ryan Tannehill?
Ryan Tannehill, to me, seems different this year in the best way. Last camp, this time last year, I was actually going through my notebook from last summer, and he'd been struggling with a lot of just turnovers, interceptions in camp, and he didn't really have a strong one. It was just okay. And see this year, just from having conversations with people in the organization, but also from what I was able to see, he physically, his just like overall presence seems very different to me, first of all, which I think is fantastic, knowing what he's coming off of and knowing what he dealt with in this offseason. He looks like the driver of this team, the owner of this, like that he has a vibe about him. All right, so let's put that aside. Just my simple observations of a quarterback. And I've seen a lot of quarterbacks this offseason. Like, I know what they look like. I know what they stand, how they talk, what they look like in a huddle, just their presence. And he has an incredible one right now. I really like the space he's in. In terms of on-the-field play, he's not throwing as many interceptions.
Yeah.
He's just not. And everyone I talk to there just tells me he's having a really strong camp. And there could be a million reasons for it. Could it be motivation? Could it be the fact that I'm flying out of Nashville and, the cover of the sports section is Malik Willis, which is fantastic. And I love the idea that Malik could one day be the future. But that is not happening this year. Not happening. It is so clearly Ryan Tannehill's team. And while it's cool that they've got another game plan for when the days that Ryan, drifts off, back down to Florida to spend the rest of his life, for now, I think Ryan's got a chip on his shoulder. He knows the last time we saw him, it was an absolute meltdown heartbreak for the entire city. So all of this piled together, I think Titans fans should be so pumped.
It's funny because I talked to a bunch of them at the first home preseason game that we had against the Bucs on Saturday out here, and it was the first time a lot of people had been back in the stadium since that catastrophic ending and the choke job that they had against the Bengals in the divisional round as the number 1 overall seed. And there was like a palpable tension with Titans fans about being back in Nissan Stadium for the first time since then. But I'm glad that was kind of the vibe that you got off Tannehill, because he's been talking in different ways about that kind of ownership of the offense, Dianna, that have made me perk up in the middle of press conferences just because the language around it is different. And you try not to, at least from my standpoint, you try not to let how much of the same stuff and the same guys and the same conversations that you're having with these dudes color what is the objective opinion about them. But he has looked more efficient. I don't think he's a different player fundamentally, but he looks comfortable and he looks efficient. And I think that's the kind of stuff that you look to translate from training camp to regular season action.
And this is a quarterback who just lost his number 1 receiver and knows no matter how we want to paint this picture, that is a significant loss. There is not a player on this Titans roster that is replacing A.J. Brown. It's not happening. It's not. What they do have, though, is a committee, a core group of receivers who all bring something different, who all bring something that Ryan has been able to either discover, find, or work on to have a connection with them. And I think that, to me, is impressive that Ryan is able to have such a good camp with players that he hasn't had that much time with. And, we talk about Robert Woods, and he's going to come along. Again, is he A.J. Brown? He's not A.J. Brown. He's not. But he has that veteran leadership in him. He's been around winners. I covered Robert a lot when he was with the Rams.
Yeah.
Just to the core, he's made up of the good stuff. And I think that's going to have a good effect on a lot of these younger players, guys like Treylon Burks, who I know, I still think there's question marks. There has to be. I think it's better. Everything I heard going into camp, it was better. He was losing weight. He was fit. And I still think there's some battles there. But I think he's another player, and I've been following along enough. He shows these flashes of, my God, this is going to work. This is going to be great. Like, maybe this was the move. But then, of course, we see like he's out of practice and he's not there today and he's not here. You know,
Yeah.
we hear all these different stories, and it seems because God knows you're not going to hear from the Titans. We can't really get to the bottom of it. Like, what's the real issue here? But you got to hope that some of this, what I'm assuming is health stuff, will get fixed as the season goes.
She's Dianna Russini at Dianna ESPN, the best in the business. Always appreciative of when she takes some of her time. You've been on television all morning long already. Do you have more TV coming up today that people need to watch?
Why? So you can jump in my shower with your booty shorts?
No. I mean, are you here? Are you in town and you just have not told me so that I don't crash your set?
Dude, that's what I'm going to start doing. Just not giving anyone a heads up. I'm just going to pop up at practice. No, I do have more TV on ESPN. I'm on This Just In and Sports Center all day long. So you can catch me there and hopefully back in Nashville soon.
Always a pleasure. Made me very happy to see you. I'm sure we'll talk again at some point in the near future. Thank you, Dianna.
Bye, Buck. Bye, Lucas.
That's Dianna Russini, ESPN NFL Insider. A lot of good information about the Titans there. And probably too much information about the state of my thighs. We'll react to some of what Dianna had to say. Is Mike Vrabel at the podium? What's going on with Titans practice?
I'll find out.
Okay, very good. We'll find out next. Welcome back. Titans wrapping up practice. Safety Kevin Byard, he's at the podium. Let's go live to St. Thomas right now.
Timeouts, knowing that they may not be able to clock it, similar to the 49ers and Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs, but they couldn't clock it. So, and we watch those things every Friday. We watch it a lot. So I just think just as a whole, just the awareness of our defense has really improved. There's always going to be small things that we're going to have to tweak in as these news guys come in. But just as a whole, as a defense, I think we're really learning not necessarily just our defense, but just football as a whole. Our IQ is raised a lot. So I think it's going to help us not only early in the year, but later on as the season goes on.
Guys, it's going to be the final opportunity for a lot of these guys to make that last impression on the coaching staff, to stay here. As a veteran who knows he's going to be here, do you enjoy watching these guys give that kind of effort in the final preseason game?
No, absolutely.
What do you tell these young guys?
Yeah, no, preseason, especially like you said, guys that, may have just got here, guys that are still fighting for spots. And I tell them all the time, like, listen, hey, not only are you fighting to make this team, but you're trying to impress all 31 other teams around the league. So, it's not something that like, oh, it's the last game, thank God. But no, it's like this, you can have the first two games, but this last game should be a game where you're trying to put your best stuff on film. So, I just tell them then go out there, relax, and just go out there and be you and make plays. I remember my rookie year, I think our last preseason game was against Miami. I was still out there that last preseason game. Caught a pick as well. I was catching punts, my rookie year, but as the younger guys on the team, like that's, it's a big bonding thing too. And as a veteran, I'm going to make sure that if I'm in the game or not, I don't know, but I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be out there rooting those guys on because I understand, these next few days, it can be stressful. You know what I'm saying? You don't know where you stand. You don't know if you're going to get a call. So just trying to be there for those guys and try to give them as much knowledge and just cheer them on as much as I can.
Kevin, you've been in this league long enough to know that there's no guarantees with anything. You've gone 9-7 and gone to the AFC Championship, and 12-5 and one and done. How much do you stress to the younger guys now that it has to happen this year because there's no guarantees for tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I try for the young guys. I try not to put that much pressure on them. Think that like, hey, as far as it can be, at the end of the day. And I feel like I've learned this over the years, just having that gratitude every single day that you just never know when it could be your last snap, your last time that you can play ball. So try to take advantage of every opportunity. And I guess that's something that I would tell the young guys. Take advantage of every opportunity, no matter if it's a preseason game or if it's just a practice rep, if it's one-on-ones, whatever it may be, just take full advantage of every opportunity. And who knows we'll have an opportunity to go to the playoffs or something like that. So obviously last year was behind us, but at the end of the day, this is a new year. Who knows if this team is obviously not going to be the same as it is going to be the years from now or whatever, or from last year. So teams are going to change. Who knows what's going to happen next year? So let's lock in on this year and play this year like it's going to be our last, everybody's last year.
What kind of progress have you seen from Kevin since off season and rookie camp and so forth?
Yeah, I mean he obviously had a little stint. I think he was in the protocol or whatever, something like that. But just as a young player, and obviously, like I said, he played corner and nickel at UT, so he's been able to do a little bit of both here just during training camp. We had some injuries. So I've been impressed with just how smart he is in the classroom. As complex as our defense is, he knows a lot. He's able to answer the right questions. And obviously, just going here trying to learn what we do. I've been impressed with just, everything part of his game, whether if it's man coverage, playing zone. Because, like I said, for a young safety, being able to go out there and communicate, it's new for these guys, because a lot of times in college it's 2x2, 3x1, and you just line up and play ball. But we have so many checks and things like that in our defense. But I've been impressed with him, especially coming off of the protocol. He's been pretty much came right back in, and, there's really no lag in his game or anything like that.
KB, where have you seen Amani take strides from last year, and how do you maybe or I guess what are kind of your expectations for him coming off of his first year as a full-time starter?
Yeah, my expectation for Amani is very high. I mean, I think he has the same expectations. Obviously, we both, feel like as far as the secondary, we're the leaders of the secondary, and we feel like every single day we got to bring that standard and make sure that we're holding guys accountable, but holding ourselves accountable first. I think Amani has really tried to work on every part of his game. I know with something we talked about the offseason, more than working his man coverage and things like that. And I think he's done that very well. But like I said, I expect, I don't want to put nothing on there. I want to put nothing out there to say, hey, you have to hold yourself to this or you have to go to Pro Bowl, All Pro. But I know just by the conversations we've had in the locker room, I'm expecting him, obviously with him, his contract being up at the end of this year, I expect a great year for him to be able to, take that next step to be able to take care of his family, rather be here or whatever it may be. Obviously, I want to play with Amani as long as I can, but I told him that, like, hey, this is a contract year for you. Go out there and make those splash plays and make as many plays as you can so you can go out there and go get that bag. You know what I'm saying?
I wonder corners are obviously a young group out there. What do you think the strength is of that group?
I mean, I think they all can cover. I think Christian can cover. I think Caleb can cover. Roger McCreary can cover. Every guy that we thought there are pretty good cover guys. Even Greg Maben, who's been here, has stints in and out of here. But I think we all can cover. So anytime you can have 3 good corners out there, regardless of who's out on the field first or who's not, that's always going to be a bonus, especially for guys at safety, that we can go out there and pretty much be freelancers, especially with the pass rush that we have. This is a huge benefit for us. So looking forward to those guys being able to go out there and make as many plays and be sticky in coverage. I think that's one of probably the main attributes of those guys. They're all sticky.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Whoa. Music. Titan safety Kevin Byard at the podium. Mike Vrabel coming up next. We'll hear from the head coach in the final hour of today's show. I'm Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. The final practice of Titans 2022 training camp has concluded, and head coach Mike Vrabel speaking with the media now at the podium from St. Thomas Sports Park. We will go to that live in just a few moments. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on a Thursday. Welcome in. Welcome back. If you've been hanging out with us so far, we're happy to have you. Lucas Panzica, Buck Rising with you until 1 o'clock. Titans have wrapped up their final day of training camp, and head coach Mike Vrabel is at the podium right now. So let's go live to St. Thomas Sports Park.
That was in play.
Willis with that mobility, or even with Tannehill for that matter, to be able to extend and go off schedule. You like to work on situations. Do you have to spend a lot of time just making sure that, that is an organized thing that they do?
There's part of that, and that was something that, really Cliff wanted to make sure that was going to happen, even in just 7-on-7, that, they're going to probably extend some plays, and, it was good. Kyler extended a play, got out of the pocket. We got two guys out of the back of the end zone, which I could show the team, like that's exactly what we want to do when a quarterback's out of the pocket. There's no illegal contact. And we have to do more of that. We've got to build more of that in so that our defense can match. If we're in zone, we're going to have to match guys that are in our zone, plaster. Receivers are going to have to show up where, the quarterback and our offense or whatever the plan is, you got guys showing up in different spots based on where the quarterback moves. So that's all good work. And sometimes, if you're not getting enough of it, you can kind of build it in there and say, hey, Ryan, go 1-2 and then, go get on the move, or any of the other quarterbacks.
But that's the benefit of your offense, because Tannehill has the ability.
Right. I mean, it's something that's going to come up. You know what I mean? It's like, don't leave the pocket just to leave the pocket. You know what I mean? But if there's a chance that something breaks down, as opposed to sitting in there and, taking a sack, we would obviously, or throwing it away, get out on the edge and see what's there, press the line of scrimmage, and make good decisions.
When guys are running carded plays, you want them to kind of just get a sense and have football knowledge of what it means there, as
it's
opposed
a
to
guideline.
running
I've always said that, that the card is a guideline. A lot of the calls are similar. I would like to use our own terminology when we can for all three phases when we're working off of a card, and use it as a guideline, and then go play football, whatever the technique requires. I don't want anybody to be a blocking dummy. Nobody's, just going to give way to anybody, because I've seen too many guys improve in the course of my playing career, me specifically, and other guys that have gone on those carded teams and, improved going against other players.
Haskins had that one run in the red zone where he had two chances to bounce outside, didn't. Made the first guy miss, and then finished the run through two tacklers. What did that tell you about him? And
that I think he knows who he is. He's not Derek. He's not going to be able to probably circle him up. Right? Derek has got the luxury of having a skill set where we've seen him make those cuts up inside. And then we give him the ball. And so sometimes he breaks outside, and sometimes, good things happen. But I think Hassan knows who he is and knows that I'm going to put my foot in the ground and I'm going to get downhill. I'm going to find contact, and I'm going to try to, run and push a pile. And there's going to be some dirty 4- and 5-yard runs, but those are efficient runs.
Derek said that he was on a plan, obviously, during training camp. You've had him out there in team periods the last couple of days. What have you seen from him? And he had an acceleration right there. It looked like normal Derek. Just how well is he coming along at this point?
Yeah, I think he's on schedule. I think that he's into it. He's mentally into it. He wants to do whatever he can do to help the football team. I think Torrey's going to have to realize he needs to get going when he's in front of him so he doesn't cause a backup on 440. You guys good? Thanks, guys. Thanks, man.
That's Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. That's a pretty funny line to end the press conference on. Torrey Carter, the fullback, needs to. He hasn't blocked, I guess, a ton for Derrick Henry. Would that be an accurate assessment? I think that he was still kind of finding his role on the football team while Kari Blossingame was still on the roster as the primary fullback. I guess Torrey Carter's got to learn what it's like to block for Derrick Henry. And apparently it's get the hell out of the way so you don't cause a backup. So a lot of things there from Mike. You heard a shortened version because he was talking while we were in commercial break, but specifically about guys and what they're looking for heading into this final preseason game, because it's worth noting, and this is an observation I've seen several people who were in attendance at practice today make. Logan Woodside got the vast majority of the second team reps today. It would seem to me that Woodside may start this final preseason game. And I don't think, listen, they don't care what I like or don't like. They don't care what I think. I think, what did Vrabel say the other day to Tehran? If I want your opinion, Tehran, I'll ask you for it. Okay. Here's our suggestion box. It's the trash can right next to the podium. You may submit all your requests here. But I think for the final preseason game, obviously you want to prevent anybody from getting injured, but there's going to be opportunities in a football game for that to happen. To start Woodside, theoretically, I think would only be detrimental to Malik Willis at this point because you still have so much that he needs to get done. He's not going to completely change what he is or make the leap that he needs to make to completely and totally secure the backup quarterback job by week one at this point. In fact, I think the percentage chance of them rolling with 3 quarterbacks on the active roster far higher right now than them only carrying 2. Like I'd probably put it at an 80% chance that there's all 3 of those guys, Woodside, Willis, and Tannehill, in the quarterback room to start the season. And then how that may adapt or change as things get more comfortable and there starts to be a greater trust built in Malik with operations stuff for them to move on from Woodside or take up a different roster spot for Woodside and put him on the practice squad. But I would rather him and Caleb Farley, Malik Willis and Caleb Farley, I just want to see them play, get the reps, continue to get the reps. I know you're not going to get all of the reps and that the preseason game is not going to completely and totally change how you come out of it as opposed to how you went into it, but it can continue to be that building of muscle memory and technique and all these different live things that you're just not going to get if you give Woodside that time. And I'm not trying to, respectfully, Logan Woodside, I'm not trying to completely squeeze him out. But I am of the opinion that if you're going to do this, then now is the time to put the squeeze on, things like that. I also think that for example, quarterbacks and wide receivers, just because we're talking about offense anyway, do you feel that you learn anything after these preseason games about what this football team is actually going to look like in 2022? Because after having consumed them multiple times over in the days after a preseason game, I just feel like it's such a warped version of what I expect from them in the regular season and the personnel just generally that I'm seeing, that I don't have any substantial takeaways about the success of the Titans in 2022 based on their 2 preseason games and a third one on Saturday. I don't know that I'm learning that much. I'm learning about what deficiencies Malik Willis still has in live game action. I'm learning about, okay, there's certain special teams things that you can glean and punting competition and things like that. But as far as like what the Titans offense is going to look like in 2022, I don't think I'm any closer to an answer about that other than Pate Frere is going to be the starting right tackle. It's such a mutated version, or not even mutated, because mutated would almost assume evolution of some kind. It's such a dumbed down version of football that I feel like it has so little to do with the week one results. Now, I think week one is probably the least applicable football game that any team will play at any point in their regular season. Because week one, you're going to see it's week 0 in college football, week 1 in the NFL. There's so many different variables that can come into that that can be applicable for one game, but not necessarily have carryover. I think for the Titans, more than anything, what did you come out of Arizona week 1 feeling? Because I think there's a lot of it has become, well, Tannehill didn't play in the preseason, and so he looked out of sorts against the Cardinals, which, of course, was stupid. Anybody who went back and watched that game would see clearly and obviously that the Titans' offensive line was getting absolutely dummied and that Ryan Tannehill didn't have any kind of a chance back there. And then on the opposite side of things, what was the one thing from that game that did not have any carryover to the rest of the regular season? Lucas, do you have any ideas?
I do not know what you're going to say.
The defense. They got smoked. Kyler wrecked them. And that was probably the best version of the Cardinals that anybody saw at any point in 2021. But you don't look at how that defense finished the year, go back to the sample size of week 1 and say, yeah, that had a lot to do with what this defense ended up being. Of course not. Now, Kyler's different and the skill set is different. And the plays that he makes off schedule, you're going to have some variance and he's going to get some, right? He and Lamar and players who have that electric playmaking component unto themselves where you truly turn it into 11-on-11 football and the quarterback becomes an advantage that way, they're going to get their numbers in some form or fashion. But you came out of week 1 last year feeling like bleep about your defense. And then it ended up being one of the most promising ones in the sport last year. So I think when you're talking about things that you're trying to learn from the preseason, it almost sounds ridiculous to say, well, try not to learn too much from the preseason. Try not to make so many assumptions about what your football team is based off the preseason. Because the reality of the situation is so many of these teams are going to look different by the time they actually put a sample size together in an NFL regular season where we feel like we know what they are. Titans feel like one of those teams, to me, anyway. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. There was an article written on ESPN.com today that names the Titans as one of the 5 teams expected to take the biggest step back this coming NFL season. I'll tell you who the other 4 are and why Bill Barnwell of ESPN feels this way about Tennessee. Coming up next.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Welcome back. So this Bill Barnwell article on ESPN that has, at least I know, was carrying a lot of conversation this morning. I did not. Lucas sent it to me last night. I didn't see it until Will Bowling brought it to my attention. Sorry, buddy. I ignored your DM. My bad.
Oh, the article? Yeah.
We sent a lot of DMs to you, me, and Robert.
There are a lot of them.
It's just overwhelming, and my DMs are kind of packed anyway. So, and that's sounds like a weird flex, but anyway. So we're gonna go through these 5 regression candidates and why Bill Barnwell believes the Titans to be one of them here in just a second. But I want to circle back to a question that I saw in the Zone TV chat regarding the backup quarterback situation and the idea, potentially, this has not been confirmed. Mike Vrabel didn't comment one way or the other about this. But the idea that Logan Woodside may start the final preseason game and depriving Malik Willis of those reps would not be beneficial to anybody involved other than Logan Woodside, who is a known commodity at this juncture. What Andrew writes in the Zone TV chat, specifically on YouTube, he says, of my position on Willis needs to start and get the majority of the reps. I disagree. I think Woodside getting the start Saturday is Vrabel giving Woodside the chance to put something of quality on film for other teams to see. I think Willis is the number 2 this season. I don't think that's respectfully, it's not, I don't think that's like, I'm not mad at the opinion. It's just, I think that's objectively false. If they, to do players a favor, to put more tape on film for other teams to consider picking them up if they are a part of roster cuts, that's just by nature of playing in the preseason game. Logan Woodside has played a little less than 4 quarters of preseason football in 2 games. That's plenty enough sample size. Logan Woodside has played in preseasons before. There is nothing about his performance, nothing about his decision-making, nothing about his arm strength, his accuracy, anything that has changed. It's just that the only thing that's changed is they have a draft pick in the quarterback room now, and not like a piss-off day 3 draft pick, a 3rd-round draft pick who was regarded by many to have first-round potential. The tape evaluation for other teams on Logan Woodside is available for them. Nothing about what he does against Arizona is gonna move the needle in this way. But I think for Malik Willis, it can continue to be beneficial. And we'll see what kind of decisions they make to that effect when the game takes place on Saturday. We've got Titans tickets to give away, as a matter of fact. Lucas reminds me in my ear, it's the return of Titans Ticket Thursday. How do we want to do this? Because it says caller 5, but you know my predisposition to not doing caller 5 things. Guys, I like to make people work for it. Is there what can we ask people that would excite them about the idea to go to the Titans and Cardinals preseason game this Saturday at Nissan Stadium? I ask objectively. I don't know the answer to this question. See, as soon as I said I have Titans tickets.
Oh,
but I've said already I don't want to do caller 5. I am morally and ethically opposed to the laziness of caller 5. Not because of anything that anybody else did, but just because I didn't know we were giving Titans tickets away today. Maybe if they give us the best matchup they're interested in watching, or the player they're most interested in watching in this final preseason game, perhaps, well, let's do that. Let's give the best nominee that a caller gives us a pair of tickets to Titans and Cardinals this Saturday at Nissan Stadium in the final preseason game ahead of Week 1. 615-737-1045.
So the best matchup?
Like if somebody gives me a player that I haven't been thinking about, but they're saying X, Y, and Z is the player that I want to watch against the Cardinals because I think he has this to prove. I think it affects this position battle. I think this affects the landscape of the roster. I think this is, something about the depth. Like,
who you're paying the most attention to on Saturday on the Titans roster and why? And the best answer is going to the game.
Yes. Did I not communicate that clearly? Probably not.
No, but I did.
Okay, very good. 615-737-1045. Lucas will get to you in a second. So in the meantime, let's look at this regression article that Bill Barnwell has put together. Predicting NFL teams most likely to decline in 2022. Numbers, history show Packers, Raiders, Steelers, Titans, Falcons will lose more games this coming season than they did in 2021. Now, of all the different teams there that kind of jump out, I think the Falcons as a regression candidate is interesting because the Falcons were not an objectively great football team to begin with. But you looked at what they did last year and you said, okay, Atlanta might have overachieved a little bit. For the Titans, though, and it's the first team on his write-up, he says they were the 5th team on his list a year ago when he wrote about the idea of regressions, and he picked them narrowly ahead of the Seahawks. Obviously, this wasn't a great decision because they went on to be the number 1 overall seed. They won 12 games. The Titans do seem to perpetually exceed expectations in that way. But the biggest metric that Bill Barnwell is looking at here is the idea of their record in one-score games. After going 7-6 in one-score games during Mike Vrabel's first 2 seasons, the 2020 Titans went 7-2 in one-score games. History tells us it's extremely difficult to sustain that. Teams that win five more close games than they lose in a given year often don't keep that up the following season. They go from 199-44 in those close games to 102-126. So that's a winning percentage of over 800 down to 447. In the same games the following year, their overall record declines by an average of 4 wins per 17 games. Titans did not keep up their record in close games. They came close. Instead of going 7-2, they went 6-2, which was impossibly close. For example, the 4th-and-1 stop that decided the Monday Night Football game against a team in the Buffalo Bills that was believed to be a superior product. I look at his analysis, and I would be, if you presented to me an argument where you said, okay, why would the Titans take a step back this year? And you gave me, well, a lack of A.J. Brown or offensive line uncertainty or I don't trust Ryan Tannehill. Any number of things that has been discussed at great length about the Titans and a step back. I would have answers to everything but their record in one-score games, and it's just simply statistically less likely that they continue to repeat. They were 2-1 in overtime games last year. They needed scores in the final 30 seconds to force overtime and beat the Seahawks, and they came up short in a similar situation, as many of you will remember, against the New York Jets. That on top of Derrick Henry and the general skepticism, not here locally, but the general skepticism around Derrick in every other NFL market or by everybody else who's consuming Titans football or who is paying attention to the Titans and being like, yeah, okay, teams in the AFC is getting better. How would they end up taking a step back? Well, one, they've got a running back who they rely heavily on, and that's not sustainable. 2, their record in close games is not sustainable. And I think I agree with those assessments. It's one of the most memorable quotes that Mike Vrabel gave coming out of that Bengals game. The idea that he felt that they were playing to the kind of game that they want to play. They were getting pressure on defense. The turnovers killed them. But they were in a one-score game at the end, and it felt like it was playing to their strengths. Now, Mike is correct in that they have done well in one-score games, which would inherently lead you to believe that it's playing to their strengths. But is it sustainable? How many times, if you're presented with a 4th-and-1, somebody the size of Josh Allen, with the success rate of Josh Allen, because remember, it was one of the most effective plays that the Bills had. Josh Allen at that size on the quarterback sneak, and you got it on the goal line. How many times is Jeff Simmons going to make that stop? More often than he doesn't. I would put the odds in the offense's favor there. It doesn't mean that Jeff can't. Doesn't mean that Jeff hasn't. But when you boil it down to statistically, okay, where could they actually take a step back in ways that are meaningful? Record in close games jumps out to me as a thing that would be a difficult measure of what they're trying to achieve. Now, I don't count them out at any point, ever. I did it several times last year, and they made me look dumb. Because why wouldn't you? They were hanging on. They were basically bandaged and duct taped back together throughout the course of the season and still somehow made the number 1 overall seed. So, I just have to eat it in that standpoint. The numbers community, every time you talk about the Titans, they basically have to eat it because they just, to their credit, find ways to win more games than they lose. But in terms of an advancement, how can you continue to have the odds in your favor that way when it's single elimination and the postseason being the biggest criticism of this team in recent years, or the lack of sustained postseason success? Anyway, something to keep an eye on. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in for the chance to win Titans tickets on Saturday to see the Titans and the Cardinals face off in the last preseason game. Let's go to Jacob in Nashville up first. Hello, Jacob.
Hello, guys. So someone I'm going to be definitely watching is NPF and just continuing that battle with Dylan and seeing if they move Dylan also into the interior line. I think the line for sure is the biggest question mark for us. So I think just continue to watch them and seeing how they're getting better. And, obviously a couple weeks away from the first start of the game. So for me, it's offensive line. And then just a pro bono tomorrow is Snip Day for me as a father. So I don't know if that's for that radio or not, but yeah, I think this week will be a good weekend to catch a game.
Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. I didn't hear what he said. It's what day for him as a father?
I don't know. I did not catch that either. Big day for him as a father is what he said.
Big day for him as a father.
I think that's what he said. I think maybe he's just trying to win some favor.
Okay, I thought it was like, I thought he said like X day, like Labor Day or something like that. Like a big day for him as a father. Okay, so we have people now playing to our human sentiment in the efforts to try to get tickets. But okay, training camp, last practice done. Like training camp officially over for the Titans. Do you have more questions or answers about the Titans offensive line today than you did at the start of camp?
I have more answers, but that's not necessarily a positive thing, right?
Expand.
Because the answer is, well, Dylan Radins clearly did not win the job that they probably wanted him to win. Like there's certain battles where the Titans probably want an outcome to take place. They just can't force it. I'm sure they would much rather second-year, former second-round pick Dylan Radins take that job at right tackle and not have to throw a rookie into the fire. But no, it's the latter. That's what's happening. So we have answers, but that's not necessarily a positive thing for the Titans because it is Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle, and we don't know what that's going to look like against the Bills and Von Miller, against the Raiders and Max Crosby.
I think that Radins plays more snaps at guard in this preseason game than he does at tackle. And that, that would tell you everything that you need to know. Not that we haven't been for a week at this point, basically. But they're going to work him in a couple different spots, but he's definitely going to play. And I would venture a bet, or I would venture a guess to say that Radins would play the majority of the snaps that he plays in Saturday's preseason game inside. So a good nominee by Jacob. Let's go to Robert in Spring Hill, who's up next. Hello, Robert.
Hey, how's it going?
Going great.
All right. I would like to keep my eye on Julius Chestnut in this upcoming preseason game. I think, he had the fumble early in the first preseason game, but then he came back and looked great after that. And he's out of Sacred Heart. And it's like, man, who ever heard of this guy? But I think he looks pretty good, and I'd be really interested to see if he makes the team.
Chestnut is somebody who – what was the conversation like with him on Blaine and Mickey? I haven't had the opportunity to hear it.
Oh, fantastic. He's a really interesting guy.
His backstory is interesting. What was your takeaway though about the sense of that he has of his place on the roster? Was that covered?
Sure, but I mean, when it comes to players trying to make a team, they're not going to sit there and tell you where they think they stack up, right? Like Chestnut's not going to sit there with us and be like, yeah, there's Henry, there's Haskins, and then I'm looking to beat out a veteran in Trenton Cannon. He didn't single anybody out, nothing like that. All he said was, I came here because I was told I would have an opportunity, and that's what I've had. It's been an opportunity, and he was talked very appreciatively about Mike Vrabel and John Robinson. It really was about his background and his time at Sacred Heart, coming up in a really blue-collar family when he was young. Like, that was the stuff that made it really interesting, but nothing gave me an indication as far as where he thinks he stands in the pecking order. He's just working towards an opportunity.
I We have had some clarification, by the way, Jacob, who called in earlier. Have you seen the tweets that are streaming in?
I have, yes. Apparently everybody heard it better than we did.
Why are we so bad at this? Why is everybody else better at listening than we are? So Jacob, who called in earlier and said it was a big day for him as a father, and apparently he referenced his snip day, which I looked up on the internet because I don't know what that is. I'm not a father. I'm a cat dad. That's about the extent of parenting that we have, parenting experience that we have on this show.
Yeah, it means he no longer plans on being a father.
Do you know that that's a threat that I use on a regular basis because I'm actively not interested in having children? So like I've told Dara that I'm going to get a preemptive vasectomy. Like I want nothing to do with it. Like that's something that I hold in my arsenal. Is I swear to God I'm going to go get a vasectomy today.
Well, you can undo it, right? Like you know.
Can you?
Yeah. I mean, you ever seen The Office? Snip, snap, snip, snap.
No, I have not. Not that specifically.
It's one of my favorite scenes.
How do you undo that? I thought once it's snipped, it cannot then be unsnipped.
It's one of the best Michael Scott lines of that whole show. It's like, do you know how physically taxing it is to have like 3 reverse vasectomies? Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
That just gave me a pain.
It's a great episode.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope the snip day goes well for you. And that does make he's right. That does make me predisposed to thinking that he may win the tickets. Chestnut, I don't think there's a spot for him, active roster wise. The return job, I don't know who their starting kick returner is. It's not Dontrell Hilliard, which I thought maybe that's how they would kind of get some special teams value. I don't think it's Racy, but wouldn't that be wild? Because I think they think there's something there, clearly, for the reps that they keep giving him there. Can you have Kyle Phillips do both punt and kick return? I would probably advise against it if you're going to have him doing offense too, which obviously you would. So what does that mean for the return situation, kick return situation specifically, and the Titans roster, and how does the running back math change there? Trenton Cannon would probably be the leading candidate at that point because who else has taken reps there? Treylon Burks has taken reps there.
In practice.
Not in a game. Amani Hooker in practice. Mason Kinsey, but I don't think he's there. Terry Godwin's already gone. Like that's the complication, the kick returning job. That's what would affect the numbers there for me. Because you already have 3 running backs who are locks and a fullback who's going to make the team. 615-737-1045. I think Chestnut's out, but we'll see. Chris is in Nashville up next. Hello, Chris.
Hello. Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
Yes, sir. I wanted to bring to the attention of Kyle Phillips this year. I believe that he will gain a starting position as a wide receiver on the active roster. I've watched the preseason games, and I've seen a pretty good amount of yards on the kick return as well, and I believe he's earned that starting spot as kick returner. But as the punt returner, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to put him as the kick returner and punt returner, as you were saying. But I do believe he has the active spot to step up for the offense this year. Also, as Des Fitzpatrick, I believe that he will see some time as well.
I agree with the second one for sure. I don't think Phillips is going to play in this last preseason game. I bet not. I would guys who know they have jobs, maybe they put him out there for a couple of returns because not insignificant. I don't know what Kyle Phillips did today in special teams work, but he dropped 3 punts yesterday. And that's not something we hadn't seen that at all.
It was his first bad day with those drills.
No, I think it's just the first bad day he's had at practice.
Yeah, just in general. Yeah.
I have not seen it. Like, that was a discernibly bad day for Kyle Phillips, not just because a safety ear-holed him.
Oh, man.
Unnecessarily, and his girlfriend came to check on him on the sidelines.
Oh, really?
It was fun. Well, I was standing right behind him. I assume it was his girlfriend. Because I saw this girl, like, leaning over this woman leaning over the little fence or rope that they have there separating fans from the players on the sideline. And she just goes, "Kyle, are you okay?" And he just, he doesn't turn around. He gives a thumbs up because I think football players probably don't want their wives and girlfriends checking on them after every play. It's just, which, by the way, it has to be incredibly stressful to be the significant other of somebody who intentionally puts themselves in harm's way as often as a slot receiver does. Phillips, though, I don't think is. I would be shocked to see him.
This game will be one of the games this weekend that features the least amount of starters on both sides.
Why this game in particular?
I mean, because just knowing Mike Vrabel, we know Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry aren't going to be featured. Knowing Cliff Kingsbury and clearly some of the apprehension that he had this week to request that they have one joint practice instead of two. And you look around the league, and the Bucs are playing like all their starters. Every single one. Every single healthy
No, I know Brady.
starter.
You told me Brady's starting.
Brady's playing. He's starting, yeah, which is not a shock. He has played in the preseason every single year of his career, and he has not missed the third preseason game of the year since 2008.
615-737-1045. Let's get one more in here. Kyle is in Georgia for the chance to go to the Titans game on Saturday. What you got for us, Kyle?
All right, so funny little story. When I talked to Lucas about this, I picked Jordan Ruse, and I said it would be like father like son. Well, while on break and on hold, I did some research and found out they're not related. But anyway,
I thought you were kidding, Kyle.
I didn't know. I literally felt like Lucas when Buck makes a mistake. I felt like I was like Lucas for a second. I had to do research and correct that mistake. But anyway, I'm still going to say Jordan Ruse because of the offensive line. And guys, I love your show. I will be up in Nashville this weekend, do a little bit of celebrating, and I'm excited. Hopefully I win tickets. If not, good luck to have fun for everyone else who won tickets. So appreciate it.
Thanks for the call. He petered out there. That was tough.
Michael Ruse is 39, so I don't think he's old enough to be the father of a Titans offensive lineman quite yet.
What happened to Kyle? What happened to Kyle there at the end? He just kind of like collapsed. It's like he got. I've gotten caught up in talking at several different points, but it just he felt like it felt like he didn't know where to land the plane on. Good luck to whoever. Yeah, anyway. They like Jordan Ruse a lot. I don't dislike him. And maybe that's because of what I'm seeing playing next to Jordan Ruse and the rest of the Titans offensive line depth, that just kind of things that make you go, oh, you know. But in the absence of Nate Davis in a couple of days this week, Jordan Ruse has gotten significant snaps. So I think that might be an interesting name to keep an eye on when you're talking about guys who are on the fringe of the roster that may make the 53. Anyway, we'll figure out who the tickets are going to go to coming up next. We'll do some last call for phone calls. We will wrap things up on a Thursday. Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Wrapping things up for our segment of the programming on this Thursday. Do some polls in a second. Preseason football tonight. 49ers Trey Lance, something to keep an eye on as that continues to kind of manifest his team at this point in San Francisco and how they're kind of assimilating around him in ways that are going to be of consequence in the NFC playoff race this year. They've got the Houston Texans. Oh, it's on Prime Video. That's interesting because it's Green Bay, Kansas City tonight too.
Yep.
That's NFL Network. Do you have Prime?
I do.
I do too. Is this the first game that they've had on Prime?
Yeah, I don't know if they've done it at any other preseason games.
Well,
they might have.
I would tune into that just out of curiosity to see what that broadcast setup looks like. You know, from our standpoint, I think that's a vastly more interesting situation. Something that I did want to note, though, that our buddy Robbie Boren at Titans PR was kind enough to send over. He sent me the starting lineups for last year for week 3 of the preseason, the final week of the preseason. How many offensive starters would you say started for the Titans in the preseason last year?
Just the entire preseason?
No, I'm sorry, the third preseason game, the final week of the preseason, because I'm utterly dismissing the idea of starters playing in the final preseason week.
I'd say 2.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you count Marcus Johnson, who I think would have played for them had he not had yet another soft tissue injury on the offense. So that's 6 offensive starters. Chester Rogers, Taylor Lewan, Roger Saffold, David Quessenberry, Nick Westbrook-Akina, and Marcus Johnson.
Oh, they all played that third preseason
They all played that
against Chicago.
They all started that third preseason game. Defensively, Simmons played, Tart, Autry, Jayon Brown, Rashawn Evans, Elijah Molden, Christian Fulton, Jack Rabbit Jenkins, Amani Hooker, and Kevin Byard. So what the hell do we know? The vast majority of that's surprising to me. That of course that would have made more sense to go back and look. But Matt Barkley did start at quarterback. So again, I ask you, what truly is the value for Logan Woodside to get those snaps over Malik Willis? I would rather see Malik Willis with the starting offense than Logan Woodside, wouldn't you? We'll see what decision they end up making. Okay, let's do some polls.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Rising Show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They will deliver it to you as soon as the car is manufactured. How much has the Vols' defensive depth improved? A lot, a little, or just not enough? 57% say a little bit. 28% say not enough. 15% say a lot.
We're a week away from kickoff against Ball State. Maybe we talk about that tomorrow, Lucas. We did a little bit with Pate, but maybe it's worth running it back around a larger conversation. Are you better or are you deeper? And do those things mean the same thing for a school or for a program like Tennessee? I think that's an interesting conversation that we'll have on Friday.
Which Week 0 college football game are you most interested in? Northwestern Nebraska, Vandy, Hawaii, or Austin Peay, Western Kentucky? Some local college football action on Saturday morning.
Lots of it.
48% are going Vandy in Hawaii. 42% Northwestern Nebraska in Dublin. 10% say Austin Peay and Western.
What time is the Northwestern Nebraska game?
Like 11:30 a.m.
11:30 a.m., so not like a crazy time. I probably just because of local interest, Vandy. I'm generally curious to look. I saw Rex Road did a big piece in The Athletic on Mike Wright, so I'm going to have to check that out after the show today, but probably Vandy just for the sake of local interest.
I love that the first college football Saturday of the year is going to be bookended by a game in Ireland and then a game in Hawaii.
Well, listen. What did Pate say earlier? By the way, if you missed Josh Pate, if you missed Dianna Russini, if you missed any of the fun that we had today and all of the great guests, check out the podcast, The Buck Rising Show, in your favorite podcast app. What Pate said about growing the game, just remember the things that you got to get right here at home before you go trying to, selling people on the idea of global growth when it's really just about making a sale that way.
What is the larger international appeal, NFL or college football? 95% say NFL. Uncle Captain says, bro, college football barely has a U.S. appeal outside of the South and Midwest.
Well, that's nonsense, of course. It's America's second most popular sport by any margin. And then it's a considerable drop-off between basketball, soccer, baseball, everything else that you would talk about. Football is king. But, I mean, it's a small sample size, but I was genuinely interested in the conversation that I heard the other day about how much college football latches on overseas, particularly in Europe, where European soccer, EPL, La Liga, so many different things, the tribalism of it is something that they can identify with better than, the Jags.
Yeah, it doesn't help that we send our least tribal franchises to England.
We sent the Dolphins and the Jags over there, and the best thing to come out of that was Uncle Herb got his first NFL win.
And what is the weakest position group on the Titans roster? 90% say offensive line, 10% say inside linebacker.
I think we should talk about that tomorrow, too. I think I'll withhold my answer until then. It's always lovely when we have rollover stuff to talk about, so we'll do that tomorrow. Coach Mack will be here at 11:20, and we'll enjoy getting a preview of what the Titans and the Bucks need, or Titans and the Cardinals need to accomplish in preseason game number 3, and A to Z Sports Prime Time for the last time tonight. I'll catch you at halftime of the preseason games that are going on. What's on Blaine and Mickey?
Blaine and Mickey are talking to Chelsea Messenger, betting expert, Martin Cove, the star of Cobra Kai.
Oh. What?
And to round it out, Colts reporter George Bremer. A very eclectic Blaine and Mickey on this Thursday.
I don't have enough time to ask what Cobra Kai is, but tune into Blaine and Mickey next.